You're listening to the Connected Parenting Minute with Will and CarrieAnn Standfest. This podcast is a conversation about parenting, using connection first, trauma-informed principles. Because when you lead with connection, everyone feels seen, which is the foundation to a more peaceful home. This podcast reminds you that you don't have to be a perfect parent, but we can all get a little better, one connected parenting minute at a time.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Will Standfest, and I'm so glad that you're joining us this evening. With me again is my lovely wife, CarrieAnn.
Hey.
So tonight on the podcast, we were going to talk about a topic that I think is important to a lot of parents. It's making a plan for when your child is dysregulated.
Dysregulated, Will. Why? What does that mean?
Well, that's a good question, CarrieAnn. We should probably define that so that we're all on the same page as parents here.
That sounds good. Earlier I was Googling, as I often Google when I don't know how to explain a word really well. So I thought, hey, well, I know what it means, but I figured I would check it out, and I found a pretty good definition.
All right, lay it on us.
All right. So emotional dysregulation refers to poorly regulated emotional responses that are not within a range of typically accepted emotional reactions.
So you're saying when our kids lose it?
Yeah, basically.
When they flip their lids?
Yes, that would be inaccurate.
I mean, I'm struggling to think of a time where any of our children have ever lost it, but you know.
Never happens.
I think I told the story on one of my reels about we were divvying up chores after dinner. That's one of the things we do in our house is you and I typically do most of the cooking for dinner, but then we have the kids clean the kitchen when we're done.
Mm-hmm.
And we were divvying up chores, and our one child was assigned the wrong chore.
Yeah.
She explained it to me that that's not the chore that she was supposed to get or that she wanted to get. I don't remember every detail of it, but it involved a very large reaction. Probably some yelling, some tears, and a bit of a meltdown. And this is from one of our children who has, experienced trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is not completely her fault. Trauma and some of the things she's experienced has literally left them with brain injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is grace and forgiveness, but she melted down over being assigned the wrong chore.
Right.
Which one could say is what was the definition again?
A reaction that's out of the norm for a typical situation. Mm-hmm. So, one of the things that we've practiced with this child is talking about the idea of, is this a big problem? Is this a medium-sized problem? Or is this a small problem? And a lot of times when she's having those big reactions, like we can, at the right timing, we have to time it right, but we can kind of talk about that and she'll be like, well, that was a small problem. Like, okay, so did that reaction match that problem? Well, no. Okay, let's just sit on that a little bit. But
let's be honest, that is not the response in the moment that she is prepared to hear a lot of times.
No, for sure. It has to be timed well. So that's why the episode tonight is about making a plan for when your child is dysregulated. Because I want to the more that I thought about this, it really comes down to that plan piece. Because us as parents, when we want to do something better, we need to make a plan and stick to it because we're the grown-ups. Children do what feels good. Adults make a plan and stick to it.
There we go. That's the line that always gets me, is that whole adults make a plan and follow it and children do whatever feels good.
Right.
So it's convicting for me because as parents, it's kind of a reminder that, I'm the adult in this relationship. Mm-hmm. When my child is acting like a kid, that's to be expected. That's
kind of their job.
Well, we're helping them get better. We're helping them learn and grow. But I shouldn't be surprised when my 10 or 12-year-old or 8-year-old acts like a child.
Yeah.
Because that's what they are.
Exactly. I think one of the things, too, to talk about and being completely honest is that when our kids have those big reactions, it can totally trigger us.
Oh, yeah.
Laying that out there and acknowledging that in the first place, I think is a step in the right direction, right? Admitting that there's a problem in the first place.
Yeah. We're going to have a show of hands really quick. If you've ever had one of your child become dysregulated, flip their lid, lose it, and yell at you, and it's triggered you, please raise your hand. Okay. Okay, everyone. Good.
Everyone.
Yep.
Right?
I mean, let's be honest. It can really set you off. I mean, that's what triggered me recording that reel in the first place is she had a total meltdown over being asked to sweep instead of put away the dishes or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it really set me off.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really frustrating. And so upon reflecting on that later, I'm like, I don't want to react like that in the future. What can I do differently? How can I make a plan? What are some things I can do to set me up for success in the future? Because I know that can be a problem for her.
Right.
She is going to have inappropriate reactions.
Mm-hmm. All of our kids.
Well, yeah,
I
I shouldn't. Yeah, I'm not trying to harp on this child.
Right.
It's all of our kids. And so if I know these things are coming, I'm the adult.
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to be prepared for that? What kind of things can I put in place? How can I have a plan to handle these situations when they come up? And I think it's something that a lot of parents struggle with. So I thought us having a conversation about this would be helpful.
No, absolutely. I think that one of the things to be thinking about and one of the tools that we've used really is called scripting. We have gone into a situation and maybe experienced a difficult situation, and it's not the first time. It will not be the last time.
What?
And, we come out of that, and when we get a chance to reflect on it and maybe talk about it later, one of the things that we've tried to do, and I think we need to continue to get better at this, but we're always trying to get a little better, is scripting what our response is. So that way, in the moment when this thing is happening that we know is particularly frustrating, we're not trying to come up with a response, because in all honesty, that response is going to be whatever we grew up with, whatever our natural response to that's going to be. And if we want to be better parents, us taking the time to script those responses is going to benefit both us and our child.
Absolutely. I think scripting a response is a powerful tool. And just to be clear, for somebody who this is the first time you've heard that, it means when you've got those repeated situations, or when you know that you're going to have a repeated question or something that's kind of upsetting to you, and you know that maybe you're going to react poorly in the moment, or you want to have a plan, is you come up with what you're going to say outside the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So when I know, I'm trying to think of a good example of scripting a response. Here's an easy one.
Right.
You're walking through the grocery store. Somebody looks at you, CarrieAnn, and she says, "Are those all your children? Wow, you've got your hands full."
It's only 8. Okay, we might have that. It does sound a little absurd the more that I say it, like outside of the moment. But from about child number 4 on, we've gotten that. Now it's less because we don't always go to the grocery store together. But
we have 8 children, and that is a slightly above average number of children.
Right. So what ends up happening is people get...
People make comments.
They do.
That are sometimes just genuine, and other times, if you think through them, they're kind of hurtful.
Right.
And so at some point, we're kind of like, I'm going to react badly if I just keep letting my reaction in the moment determine what I say. And so being an adult who devises a plan and follows it, we came up with the, it's only 8 response, because it makes us chuckle inside. It lightens up the mood, and it helps us not say something we'd regret.
Right. Exactly.
Which is completely applicable, I think, to this situation with a child becoming dysregulated, and we're a bit triggered.
Right. It really did come up, and we're going to kind of harp on this plan piece for just a minute more, is like homework struggles or asking questions. We tend to, as parents, ask a question. Well, why did you do that? And for some of our children, that question is just fine. We're looking for explanation. We're looking for connection. But for some of our other children, that question is not helpful. It just isn't, regardless of the circumstances, because of how that child or those children, their brain works.
Yeah, that's what trauma does to your brain.
Exactly.
It's a survival thing. And so when you get asked why, a lot of times children who've experienced trauma will interpret that as an accusation or as a defense mechanism. And their instant response is to say something that they think you want to hear.
Exactly.
To shut down. You go into that fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Yep. And so trying to work on scripting that response, and this is a big one for me still, is not always instantly asking why. And it's challenging. I have to come up with more creative things or make observations rather than ask questions. And so it's another example of how in certain situations you can, pre-plan what you're going to say. And that takes that stress out of the moment to figure it out.
Absolutely. I think that's a big part of it is making a plan.
Right. So that's our first point. Our second point is calming yourself in those situations.
I am
Wow.
reacting completely appropriately. I don't know what you're saying.
Honey, we might need to talk after this podcast.
Oh boy. So calming yourself. What would that look like in the moment? Your kid just yelled at you over sweeping the floor and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated. Da, da, da. What do you do in that moment, babe? What is like your go-to thing?
I think that my go-to is normally clenching my jaw and then trying to walk away, or even sometimes taking a deep breath. Sometimes there's times where I'm just like, I'm going to take a little break and try to walk away from the situation. For me, water's a big thing. I know that when I'm starting to get heated, if I go drink some water, sometimes that will help.
Well, there's scientific research that talks about that, of how being even 10% dehydrated, by the time you feel like you're thirsty, you're
already dehydrated.
You're already dehydrated.
Right.
And so staying on top of that is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, it's the deep breath thing. Like if I have to react because there's something going on or I'm trying to break up a fight, it's like deep breath in. Dear Jesus, please help me not kill them. Help me say something helpful.
Right.
Deep breath out. And then like, guys, why don't we take a break here?
Mm-hmm.
And, that's one of the scripts I go back to is, okay, why don't we step away and get a glass of water?
Mm-hmm.
Or me personally, glass of water, deep breath, whisper a prayer. Going for a walk really helps. If it's a situation where you're able to like come back to it in 10, 15 minutes, getting outside, walking around really helps.
Sometimes rubbing my forehead. There's nerves above your eyebrows that can be very relaxing if you rub them.
The magic mustache, right along your upper lip there.
There's a whole ton of stuff we can dig into that for self-regulation when you're trying to calm yourself. But I think asking yourself, what are the things that calm me down and how can I practice those?
Yeah. It's like, if you have a job outside the home, what do you do when you're stressed out? What thing kind of brings you down, brings you back, helps you kind of regulate for a second when you're having a hard time? Or if you're inside the home, what things do you do when your husband or wife comes home at the end of the day and you're like, I just need a minute? Like, what do you go do to regulate in that minute? And kind of looking at ways that you can incorporate that, because as much as it feels like it in the moment, a lot of these situations can survive for 5 minutes while we calm ourselves down.
Right. If it's not an emergency, like nobody literally has something dangerous going on or whatever, if
it's a safety thing, it's a safety thing.
Right. And you have to deal with it.
But a lot of times it's not. Even though it feels that way.
Brain goes to the same place.
Right. Because you're in fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Right. Because you just, sometimes people will explain to just see red. Like it's super frustrating. And so I think knowing yourself, and then sometimes even practicing that thought outside the moment of like, well, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Oh, yeah.
That goes back to making a plan. But sometimes that this thing comes up a lot of times and it's like, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? And sometimes it's not that bad. I have this kid that will ask me over again if he can do certain things in the kitchen. And the other day, and it does stress me out a little bit because sometimes I'm in the middle of other things and I can't stop and help him. And so I actually said to myself, what's the worst that's going to happen? And I'm like, well, if he slips and cuts his finger, then I'm going to have to take him and get stitches. Like, can I live with that? Yeah, I can actually. That would suck. But I've said, you know what, buddy, go ahead. Just be careful. But I was also telling him that I believed in him, that he was capable, and knowing that it would be inconvenient, but it wasn't going to be the end of the world.
For sure. And I think that's a good thing. And just, we got to be careful too of like, what's the worst can happen? I'm sure that I'm not the only one who can come up with the absolute worst case scenario that every situation ends in my child in jail or something like that. So
yeah, but normally they're not quite that bad.
They're normally not, but it's easy to go there as a parent, and
that's true.
We can just recognize that that's not the most likely outcome. So,
all right. So somewhere in there, when you have yourself calm, you can kind of use some of those techniques to calm them too. I mean, it's just something to remember, like calm yourself down, make sure that they're calm. We can talk about that, tired, hungry, lonely, angry. Did I do that right? I don't remember.
Hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
There you go. Okay.
Hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
I'm really bad at that acronym.
It's all good.
Because sometimes it's a snack, sometimes they're dehydrated, all those things, like paying attention to those. And then I think the last thing we can talk about is, our other big takeaway is practice outside the moment.
Ooh, that's an interesting thought. What does that mean, hon?
Well, I think that really means is taking those situations that happen on a regular or somewhat regular basis and going back to those once the emotions die down a little bit, but I think it means that we reconnect with our child after whatever dramas happened. And sometimes that means apologies on our end. Sometimes
many times it means apologies on our end.
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest.
That's true.
The number of times I've had to apologize to my child is a lot.
That's very true.
But it's very helpful.
It is.
So for any parents that haven't done that out there, I will encourage you, as a man who has learned to apologize to my children, it is very powerful and a very helpful thing.
Well, it's really good for us because it helps bring that connection back to our kids, but it also is really good for them because they are seeing that modeled.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you the amount of times that I've had an adult apologize to me as a child really stuck with me. Like that really, it was like, wow, I'm important. Like that meant a lot to me. Anyway, but practicing outside the moment means taking a situation and being like, hey, do you remember when I asked you to sweep the floor and you totally freaked out? What can we do to maybe try that again? We've talked before about different ways to do that. And, maybe one of them is like the wrong way, the right way.
That is one of our children's favorite games, is when we're trying to practice a skill. One of our children has been reacting poorly to a certain situation. Like right now, our youngest struggles to listen sometimes.
Yeah.
She's a very fiery, independent spirit, and I don't want to crush that spirit.
Right.
I want her to grow up to be a strong, independent woman.
Mm-hmm.
There is a level that she kind of takes it a little too far, where she's just kind of being sassy and naughty, and she knows it.
Right.
And so we kind of work with this. Well, it's got to be playful.
Mm-hmm.
If in the moment I come down like, that was the wrong way, you need to do it the right way. No.
Right.
That is not what we're talking about.
No.
This is typically later on. We talk about that. Hey, honey, when we asked you to clean up your room and you ran away and said no and whatever, that wasn't really the right way to handle that. So we're going to do a right way, wrong way. And so if you're my daughter, I'm like, all right, so I'm going to try to get in the mindset here. Like, all right, honey, when I asked you to clean your room up earlier, what did you do? Do you remember?
I ran away and said no.
Yeah, I remember that. Do you think that was the best way to react to daddy when I asked you to clean your room?
No.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. I think maybe we can practice the right way and the wrong way. Do you want to show me what is like the wrong way to do it? Like, can you show me? Can you show me how a really good way to do that, hon?
Yeah. Let's try it.
Honey, can you please clean up your room right now?
No, I'm never going to clean up my room. That's the worst thing ever. I'm never listening to you ever.
Hey, good job. High five. Good job doing it the wrong way. All right. So now let's see if we can try practicing it the right way. Because you are really good at the wrong way. That was pretty impressive. Nice job.
Oh, okay.
So let's try it again, honey. Hey, honey, can you clean up your room for me?
Okay, Daddy. It's a lot. Can I have a little bit of help?
Absolutely. I would be happy to help you.
Okay. Thank you.
And a couple of key points out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it playful.
Mm-hmm.
Be willing to give them a voice. Cheer them on. Make it funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm struggling to remember the specific statistic, but the number of repetitions for a human brain to learn a new task is somewhere around 200 or 400 repetitions.
I think it's 400, yeah.
And research, like statistical scientific research, does the number of times for a brain to learn that same skill when you incorporate playfulness is like 20 or 30 times.
I think it's like, something like, it's really low. You have to look that up.
It's like a tenth of the time.
Right.
And so the more you can incorporate fun and play in these little skill teaching things is really huge. And in that little play acting, the other thing I want to pull out really quickly, the reason she reacted poorly is because she was overwhelmed.
Yep.
Right? I mean, the real thing right there was she felt overwhelmed that cleaning the room by herself was too much. And so outside the moment when she's a little more calm and can react a little better, she just expressed, hey, I want to do my room, but I'm overwhelmed. And so me helping her, that's fine. That's totally cool. If my child was like, oh, Dad, I'm just overwhelmed. I want to clean my room, but I'm just overwhelmed right now. Could you help me? Most of the time.
Most of the time, or at least like, I can help you come up with a plan, but because we want to help our children. So.
Absolutely.
All right. quick recap.
All right. So our big points for tonight
are number 1, have a plan.
Because children do what feels good. Adults devise a plan and follow it.
Absolutely.
Number 2,
calm yourself. I think that really comes down to spending some time self-reflecting and saying, you know what, what helps me calm in the moment when I'm, frustrated, and finding those and practicing those, because when we can remain calm, we're helping our children see that there's a better way than to freak out. And it takes a lot of repetition to see that.
Yeah.
But we're actually doing 2 things. We are building the relationship with our child, but also showing them an example of something that maybe we never saw growing up.
Right. And we're practicing the regulation skills that we would hope that they would have.
Right.
And then the final one is
practice outside the moment.
And one of the best ways to do that is right way, wrong way, or just talking with your kids, depending on the age of your kids. Playfulness angle helps at any age. It helps a little more when they're younger. But honestly, playfulness can also get past some of that teenage kind of defensiveness. I'm too cool. I know all the stuff kind of thing.
Well, and sometimes we've even done this at the dinner table.
Oh,
and and everybody finds it hilarious, because who doesn't like getting permission to yell at your parents and stomp away? But we've built that skill where they know that they're going to come back and do it the right way. And, we kind of almost invite them to do it as awfully as they can, so they kind of get it out of their system.
It's good. It's really helpful.
All right.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for listening in. We appreciate each one of you. As always, reach out with any comments, any thoughts, any ideas you have for future episodes. We love to hear from our listeners. And we want to remind you that
you don't have to be a perfect parent,
but we can each get a little bit better. One connected parenting minute at a time.
Thank you so much for listening to my mom and dad's podcast. I hope you feel really inspired today, and remember to subscribe for the next episode.
For more parenting tips or to connect with us, check out the Connected Parenting Minute on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Or you can send us an email using connectedparentingminute@gmail.com.